My name is Caleb Rivers. I'm 49 years old. I grew up in the kind of place most people forget exists: gravel roads, homemade dinners, and Sundays that belong to church and family. I was raised on a farm in northern Georgia, where hard work wasn't praised, it was expected. I never had much, but I had enough to understand that wealth isn't loud, it's quiet. It builds itself slowly, brick by brick. That's the kind of life I built. So when I walked into my sister's high society wedding and heard her call me country with a laugh, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Savannah always chased the shiny things. She left home at 18 and never looked back. Married a lawyer, divorced a banker, and now she was marrying into a hotel empire. Her new husband came from a family where people wore silk pajamas and had wine cellars bigger than our old house. The wedding looked like a Hollywood movie: string quartets, champagne walls, people dressed like royalty. I came in wearing a classic black suit, clean cut, tailored just enough. But I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't there to compete. When she spotted me near the bar, her eyes lit up, but not with warmth. It was more like amusement. She walked over, glass of rosé in hand, and said with a smirk, "Wow, Caleb, you clean up nice." Didn't expect to see cowboy boots here, though. Her friends laughed, like I was a walking joke. I smiled back, calm as ever. "Didn't expect to see so much marble and so little soul," I replied. They didn't get it, but I wasn't talking to them. I was talking to her. See, what Savannah didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd built a freight company from the ground up. Started with one used truck and a garage. Now I had over 300 rigs running coast to coast. I had warehouses in 6 states and contracts with companies her new family bowed down to, but I didn't advertise it. I didn't wear my success on my wrist. I didn't need to. Real money doesn't ask for applause. But her words weren't just a dig at me. They were a rejection of our roots, of the life that shaped us. She wanted to erase all that, pretend she came from silk, not sweat, and that's what hurt the most. Not her snide tone, not the fake laughs, but the way she acted like where we came from was something to be ashamed of, as if being country meant being less. I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I just watched, observed, measured the room and the people in it, and I made a quiet promise to myself, not to prove her wrong out loud, but to show her in time how the man she mocked built a kingdom while they were busy throwing parties in castles they didn't own. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't mean defeat. It means you're thinking, watching, letting people show you who they really are. That night, I didn't respond to Savannah's comments, not because they didn't cut deep, but because I've learned that dignity is louder than defense. I stood near the back of the ballroom, listening to speeches about generational wealth and private islands, and I realized most of them were performing for each other. There was no depth, just borrowed grandeur passed around like hors d'oeuvre. I thought about how we used to share a bedroom with cracked windows and quilts our grandmother sewed by hand. We didn't have central heat, but we had laughter. We didn't have brands, but we had stories. Savannah used to dream about escaping all of it. I didn't blame her then, but now she didn't just escape, she disowned it. And that made her unfamiliar to me, like I was watching someone play a character in a play that forgot its script. What kind of person sneers at the soil that fed her? After the wedding, I sat alone in my hotel room with the city lights pouring in like a mockery. I looked at my hands, still calloused, despite years of delegation. Those same hands once held down the tarp on my first freight job in a thunderstorm. They carried steel stacked crates, signed contracts, shook hands. These hands didn't need approval from a ballroom crowd, but still there was an ache in me. Not for their acceptance, but because I had let them think I needed it. I thought about the missed calls over the years, the text from Savannah that stopped when she realized I wouldn't play the part she wanted me to. She once asked me to invest in a boutique business idea of hers. I said no, not out of pride, but because she didn't believe in it herself. She never forgave me for that. From that point on, I became the blue-collar brother in her eyes, reliable, old-fashioned, boring. But what she never understood is that quiet consistency is what builds empires. In that moment of reflection, I realized I didn't need to clap back or show up with proof of success. I just needed to keep doing what I'd always done, move strategically, speak rarely, and let results echo where words don't. But I also knew something had to change, not for her sake, for mine. I'd spent too long hiding what I built, thinking humility meant silence. But there's a difference between being humble and being invisible, and I was done being invisible. I wasn't planning revenge, not the dramatic kind anyway. What I planned was a subtle unveiling. I wanted her to see the truth. Not in a headline or a confrontation, but in the most undeniable way possible, reality. I was going to move a few chess pieces. Nothing loud, nothing theatrical, just a few careful moves that would make her realize she didn't just mock her brother. She mocked the man who helped build the very world she was trying to enter. Back home, I didn't speak of the wedding to anyone. My staff noticed a subtle change in my posture, maybe the way I paced during strategy calls, or how I lingered longer in the warehouse reviewing shipments. But I said nothing. The truth is, revenge, when it's real, doesn't come with a trumpet. It comes dressed in precision, and I wasn't seeking to destroy my sister. I just wanted to let the truth breathe for once. And truth, when placed beside fiction, always wins. A few months after the wedding, Savannah's new husband's family launched a luxury event space project. It was all over the press, an opulent retreat center in Aspen, marketed as a private haven for the ultra-wealthy. I recognized the name of the design firm instantly. I had worked with them before, discreetly during a high-profile logistics rollout, and so I made a few calls, not to block anything, not to sabotage, just to inform. I let them know who I was, reminded them of the contracts we had, and that I'd be expanding soon. Timing is everything. What I didn't need to say, my expansion was already swallowing up one of the distribution routes their hotels depended on. Quietly, legally, efficiently, their operations would now go through my freight lanes, meaning delays if I chose, priority if I didn't. And in the world of luxury, time is not just money, it's reputation. I wasn't cruel about it. I even sent a holiday basket to their corporate office. No card, just my company logo subtly stamped inside the ribbon. Meanwhile, Savannah tried launching a lifestyle brand, influencer style, with curated Southern charm pieces. I smiled when I saw the campaign. The same aesthetic she used to mock me for was now her marketing strategy. Rustic luxury, they called it. Boots, barns, mason jars, things she hadn't touched since we were kids, chasing chickens in the backyard. Her irony wasn't lost on me. But the kicker, her supply chain relied on the exact Southern manufacturers I already had long-standing contracts with. So, I placed a gentle hold on their orders. Just a few weeks delay, citing capacity issues. I didn't lie. We were busy. My company had just secured a federal shipping contract, but the result was clear. Her launch stumbled. Reviews called it disorganized. She blamed the vendors, but in reality, she'd tried to cash in on an image she didn't understand, using a network she no longer respected. And I didn't need to lift a finger. Her own disconnection did the work for me. Behind the scenes, I kept building. I hired her former branding manager. I sponsored a regional event her husband's firm couldn't afford to back that quarter. My moves were silent, respectful, and absolutely intentional. I never mentioned her name. never spoke ill. I just let the gaps in integrity speak for themselves. Because sometimes, the best revenge is showing them the empire they mocked is the very ground they're trying to build on, and it's already claimed. It started with small things. Things most people wouldn't notice unless they were paying close attention. Her brand's Instagram went quiet for 2 weeks. The photographers she hired dropped out last minute, and the rustic getaway she tried to plan as a brand experience got postponed due to logistics issues. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a message. I just watched as the machinery she had borrowed to build her image began to sputter. The thing is, you can fake luxury, but you can't fake structure, and I'd spent decades perfecting mine. Her husband, Bradley, Mr. Hotel Empire, began calling the same vendors I worked with, trying to secure faster deliveries. I know this because one of my senior operations managers forwarded me the email. Any chance we can bypass the current schedule for a priority shipment? He asked. The answer? A polite decline, citing fulfillment priorities. I didn't even need to get involved. Loyalty, it turns out, is something you can't buy with wine tastings and rooftop parties. You earn it in storms and deadlines. And my team had been with me through all of it. By the end of that quarter, Savannah's brand had quietly rebranded. No more rustic luxury. Now it was modern elegance, with a southern twist. A watered-down version that pleased nobody. Her funding started drying up. Investors began backing out, not because I told them anything, but because the numbers weren't adding up. She had relied on aesthetics, not infrastructure, and when the image cracked, there was nothing underneath to hold it up. Meanwhile, I bought a new office building downtown. Modest, efficient, and perfectly located. I didn't announce it, but word got around, especially when the commercial decorators they had previously hired started working with us instead. It wasn't sabotage, it was gravity. Everything they tried to build leaned on networks I had already solidified with quiet patience and trust. They mistook my silence for absence. They were wrong. One night, I got a call from my mother. She lives out near the old farm, still tending to her rose bushes like it's sacred work. She said Savannah had stopped by, looking worn out, not her usual polished self. She asked how you're doing, Mom said. I told her you're steady like always. I could tell by her tone she didn't want to pry. But I knew what she was really saying. Savannah was starting to see the truth. Not from my words, but from her own reflection. And that's what I wanted all along. Not her ruin. Not her humiliation. Just the slow, undeniable realization that character builds kingdoms and flash burns out. That the brother she mocked for being too country had already mastered the world she was trying to enter. And I did it with grace, with time, with silence. The first time I saw Savannah again after the wedding was at a regional business summit, Neutral Ground. I was invited to speak on a panel about sustainable logistics and regional economic growth. She wasn't there as a guest. She was sitting near the back, quiet, unannounced. She didn't make her usual entrance. No flash of fashion or dramatic heels clacking across the marble floor. She looked smaller, like something in her had folded in. For the first time she saw me not as her farm boy brother, but as a man who'd built something she hadn't yet figured out how to name. I spoke about systems, about long-term thinking, about the importance of roots. I wasn't trying to be poetic, but I felt her watching me as if every word was reshaping a version of me she'd held onto since we were kids. Afterward, a small crowd gathered to shake my hand, exchange cards, ask for meetings. She didn't come over. She didn't need to. The message had already been delivered, and it didn't require a single ounce of revenge. It was just the truth standing tall in daylight. A few weeks later, I received a letter, handwritten, from her. No dramatic apology. Just a few lines of honesty. "I was wrong," she wrote. "I thought loud meant strong. I thought polished meant successful. You built something I never understood. I hope someday I can say the same about myself." I didn't frame it or keep it in a safe. I read it once, nodded, and placed it in a drawer I rarely open, because peace doesn't need to be celebrated, it just needs to be lived. Her brand quietly dissolved. The LLC was closed. Her social pages archived. She moved into a quieter life, I heard, doing something with interior spaces, possibly something more hands-on. That suited her better, I think. Something honest, something closer to who she used to be before the world told her she had to become someone else. We haven't spoken much since. A birthday call here, a holiday check-in there. But the tension is gone. What's left is something simpler. Not warm, but not cold either. Just real. As for me, I kept building. I never slowed down. I used what happened not as fuel for bitterness, but as confirmation of something I always believed. If you stay true to your path, the world eventually bends toward it. You don't need to shout your worth. You just need to carry it well, and eventually, even those who doubted you will be forced to reckon with the quiet storm you've become. This isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of recognition, of watching someone finally see what was always there. Not through confrontation or cruelty, but through the steady unfolding of truth. In the end, I didn't need to prove I was 10 times richer. I only needed to live like a man who never needed validation to begin with. It's strange how the loudest moments in life sometimes come wrapped in complete stillness. I never wanted applause, but life has a way of handing you quiet victories when you've earned them. A few months after everything settled, I took a trip back to the old farm. It's still there, worn but standing, like the bones of who we were still rooted deep in the ground. I walked through the fields barefoot like I used to, the early morning dew soaking into my jeans, and I realized this was always my foundation, not the buildings, not the money, this land, this peace. I stood by the fence where I carved my name at 16 with a rusted pocket knife. The wood was cracked now, weathered by time and wind, but my initials were still there, untouched, like they were waiting to remind me of who I am underneath the titles and contracts and investments. I didn't build my empire out of spite. I built it out of promise. A promise to myself that no matter where I went, I wouldn't lose the man that place made me into. And I have. Savannah called me not long after that. No pretense, no awkward small talk. Just, "I thought out you today. I remembered how you used to fix Dad's truck when no one else could." I smiled at that. It was the first time she'd spoken to me like we were siblings again, not characters in her carefully edited world. We talked for 20 minutes. She asked if I still had that old wrench set. I told her I never let it go. Some things you just keep, even when you outgrow them. I told her something I'd been holding for a long time. You don't need to be perfect, Savannah. You just need to be honest. There was silence on the other end, then a soft "I know." She didn't cry, neither did I. But something healed in that moment. Not everything, not fully, but enough to breathe easier. These days I don't chase expansion. I don't need to. My company runs well without me needing to hover. I spend more time mentoring young business owners from small towns, kids like I was once. I tell them the truth. It's not about being flashy. It's about being rooted. Build your name like you're planting a tree. It might take longer, but when the storms come, you'll still be standing. And as for that wedding crowd who once laughed at my boots, they probably forgot me the next day. But I didn't build my life for their memory. I built it for the legacy they'll never see coming. For the future I'm still walking toward, one silent step at a time. Because in the end, real power doesn't need to roar. It just keeps moving, steady, grounded, unstoppable.